Now it's time for Straight on the Point with Jesse T. from some undisclosed location somewhere in the world. Now, ladies and gentlemen, here's Jesse T.
Oh, my goodness gracious. I am here. It's the Jesse T Show. Good to have you along with me. The Brown Beauty is back on duty. Boom. Yes, we're on Facebook.com/Jesse Torrero. YouTube Live, Jesse Torrero, The Power of Voices. Also on Facebook.com/Power of Voices. Tumblr, Twitter, Snapchat, Livestream, Periscope, and Instagram Live, Jesse Torrero. We are on the air and everywhere from the community to the world. It's a Thursday in Southern California. It's good to have you along with me. We've got an extra special guest star, and he is a star in his right, absolutely, and I'm so proud and happy to have the man to my right hanging in with me, Mr. James Fargo in this corner.
Yeah. Taking on the world.
That's right, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good.
You know, now, if you don't know who James is, then just go to IMDb and spend the next 3 days there because it's about that long. And he has done everything, almost everything, but he's worked with so many great actors and producers and people in this business. He harkens back to a time where my grandfather was on the lot in Warner Brothers, hired by Jack Warner in 1938. And at the end of his career is kind of when James was starting his career, kind of there in the old studio system. So we're gonna talk a little bit about that and everything that's going on for him and current stuff. Just some business we need to take care of real fast here. Always remember you can download the free app right here on the powerofvoices.com. That's our global radio network. It's for Android and Apple. So when you download that app, you'll be part of hundreds of thousands of listeners on the radio side, and you can catch us here because we archive everything here visually after the show. It starts really radiating out there. So it's a good time for you as we podcast everything. It turns into a podcast. I do need a pen, though. If you can give me a pen, that would be great. I didn't bring a pen and a pencil. And, of course, the man that handles everything that makes us sound so good, it's Lee Baby Michaels. Yes, Lee. All right. There you go, my friend. There you go. Absolutely. And we can't forget about Lee because without Lee, we have nothing going on. That's for sure. So, James, how was your drive in? How was the traffic?
Traffic was awful, but not that bad.
You have some secret chemical that you take or combination that gets you here feeling good like that?
It's called numbness.
Man, we can be like 3 miles away from our destination, but it can take us like 3 hours to get there.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, well,
yeah. What can you say about it?
Exactly nothing because it's L.A. and
it's getting worse.
It is because the population is growing and the younger generation now are all getting cars and I don't know.
And when
I was 16 years old, I bought my first car.
What was it?
A 39 Chevy.
Oh, I want that car. I want that car right now.
I do, too.
Yeah, man. Woo! 39 Chevy.
Yeah, 39 Chevy, four-door sedan.
What an automobile.
I put a rod through the block.
You were riding that thing hard.
Yeah, it was.
No oil, huh?
I was 16 years old, and you know what?
Yeah.
But
the nice thing about those cars, they had a lot of room inside. So at 16 years old, you needed a lot of room in your automobile, that's for sure.
Anyway, that's a different story.
Right.
But anyway, I mean, I grew up in a very small town.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't hit Los Angeles till I was in the Navy. I had just finished boot camp. And we drove back up, a buddy of mine and I drove back up into L.A.
Mm-hmm.
And this was back in 58.
Wow. So were you in Korea?
No.
Okay.
I was just between the two.
Okay, yeah. My father served in Korea off the Lexington, so that's why I asked about your age. A little bit older.
Well, I served off a destroyer escort. Started off out of Seattle, and then we moved to L.A.
The stories that the guys...
Hawaii. We moved to Hawaii.
Some of the stories you hear about the fellas that were on those destroyers getting tossed around in hurricane winds and giant ocean swells of 100 feet, they actually... Would they actually kind of be like submarines, go under the water?
We told the executive officer after one little experience we wanted submarine pay.
I mean, you guys started
literally. We stood. I was on the wheel.
Right.
I was driving.
Oh, you were driving. Oh,
I was driving
man.
at the time, and I watched the wind go from about 40 knots
Uh-huh.
to 110.
Oh, right in front of you.
Right in front of me.
That means the oceans start growing.
All of a sudden, we kind of went up like this and went down, boom, like that, and the green water broke over the flying bridge.
What's that, about 50 feet?
It's about, well, the open bridge was 60 feet off the water line.
Oh, man.
So we went,
You're underwater. Yeah, I can see why you wanted submarine
popped
pay.
up the other side, and the officer of the deck sat out on the open bridge with a heavy coat over him like that, curled up on the command chair, and just sat there. Didn't move.
He was outside when all this was going on?
It's all covered over. It was all covered over.
So he was like freaked out.
Freaked out totally.
I guess so, man.
So the quartermaster, the bosun's mate of the watch, and myself drove the ship for 4 hours. We were making course changes. We'd have to,
right,
just so we could stay.
Yeah, because you can't go right into the wave. You got to kind of diagonal it.
Flip over.
Yeah, and I've even read stories where sometimes the bow would crack or something would crack. The power of the water coming down would snap those destroyers.
So anyway, we dug. We survived it all, and we all laughed about it the next day.
Yeah, what are you, all but 22 years old then?
Yeah, I don't think I was that old.
Yeah, this was like a fun time, you know?
Yeah, I mean, this is great fun.
Yeah,
but see, this is why the Navy hires these, they recruit these young kids who get out there and don't really give a crap.
And they think they're invincible.
Yeah,
they can swim through a 100-foot swell. No problem. We'll tread water for a day. Yes. Well, the Navy, but the neat thing about military service is that, one, you learn to appreciate your comrades, your partners.
Yeah.
You learn to appreciate the teamwork that has to take place there. But and the command and control, you learn all those discipline things. But you also learn just how wonderful it is to be an American. When you're serving in the American military service. And you really learn to appreciate the world and how the world affects us and how we affect the world and how nice it is to come home.
Well, that's very, very true. And it's because one of the reasons I joined the Navy is I wanted to get out and see the world.
Right.
Well, I got into the destroyer escort. It was called radar picket duty. Mm-hmm. So when we got transferred to Hawaii, I said, "Oh boy, I'm finally getting out of the United States."
Yeah, man, Hawaii too.
On our way over, they made it a state.
Oh, so you got it right when they became a state for the first time. Oh, wow.
And I thought, I'm going to get outside the United States. Whoopee.
Yeah, right. Now you're in the 50. What's that? That was let me see. That came before Alaska, so that was state 49.
Yeah.
Yeah, then Alaska followed there after about 10 years. And
anyway.
But Hawaii, what was the population there? All there, maybe 25,000 people on the Big Island at the most, possibly.
On the Big Island, yeah.
Yeah.
On Oahu was a big city.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
And we never got over.
So you have fond memories of being and serving in the Navy. 4 years? 4 years?
Yeah, 4 years.
And then you come home and you decided, well, I'm not going to go back to the small town USA. I'm not going to go there. I want to do something else. I'm kind of a worldly guy now.
Well, not really. I came back, got out of the service. I did go back home.
Oh, you did? Now, where is home for you?
Wenatchee, Washington.
I'm going to say that Wenatchee?
Wenatchee, Washington.
That obviously is Native American, and
Yes.
Wenatchee, Washington. So you were a Northwestern baby. Yeah. Yeah, okay. So oh man, no wonder you went to the Navy. It rains 24 hours a day up there.
Well, not where I lived. It rains in Seattle, and it rains in Everett and the coast.
Right.
The minute you get the other side of the mountains, just like here.
It's a high desert.
A high desert.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, I went back because I wanted to go back to school.
Right.
I worked for a year, worked for RCA Service Company. which installed communication stations for the Navy.
Right. That's when there were such things as tubes. You know, you actually had tubes.
We were actually making the transition
at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I remember going into the store in the neighborhood grocery store, when the TV needed some new tubes or the radio needed some new tubes. My dad would give me a series of tubes, and I'd go over there and I'd see which size it was, test it, hit the test, and see what size, and I'd buy the tubes, and we'd go back and plug them in, and everything would work nice and simple.
yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. I was a young kid when that happened, but you're living at a time.
Well,
I was just born.
They were making the transition from vacuum tubes to transistors,
right,
and then it went on to diodes and all kinds of stuff.
So you spent some time up there. Now you get your education.
So I went back to junior college, and went to junior college for a year. Got grades up enough so that I could get in the University of Washington.
Nice. Yeah.
And that's where I went.
So what I'm leading up to is where did film and where did the entertainment industry come into play? Because now you're in a whole different space and time here.
So I started off in college as a physics major.
Well, you know, why not? I mean, I'm so far away from the only physics I know is the physics of Mama T, baby. That's the only physics I know, that's for sure. If you start talking numbers and stuff like that, it's like, okay. Wow, physics.
Yeah, and I did fine at the science. The science was easy. The mathematics got me.
Yeah, that stuff.
And I was never very good at mathematics. Don't know why. It just wasn't. So what happened was my counselor brought me in. He said, "Jim, you got a problem here." And he said, you got to make a choice. What are you going to do? And so we talked, and I told him because I loved the theater.
Right.
I did theater in high school and directed some plays.
Well, that is so dynamically different than physics. I mean, you're talking totally. Two sides of a rubber band here that are completely so far away from each other.
I liked two things when I was in high school, and that was theater and drama.
Well, you know, stage. Yeah, absolutely. I love the stage.
Physics had a fascination to me because it can be very dramatic. When you study certain things, you know, regarding the universe and so on, it can be very dramatic.
It's really interesting that you say that because my son is a mechanical engineer, and we take he wants to be a NASA scientist someday.
Right.
So we have some friends at JPL, and when he goes over there and hangs out with them, you know, during the summer internships and stuff like that, and I go just hang out once in a while, I see these guys in the lab, and they are just so. They are just so into what they're doing. It is like drama. I mean, they're doing quirks and figuring out the measurements of the Uranus. And I just said, well, it's easy to figure out the measurements of my anus. Call my doctor. But right. But you know what I mean. They are very. They laugh and they cry and they go, oh yeah, oh man, it's weird.
It is. It is.
It's weird.
But I was really heavy into drama and in theater. I ran the high school theater, the stage, and everything. So when I got out of the Navy, I wanted to go back to university. I started off as a physics major, and he said, "Well, that's not going to work. Your math isn't good enough." So he said, "What else do you like?" And I told him about the theater. He said, "Well, you like the combination theater and science. How about something like radio and TV?"
There you go, because you have the technical aspect, especially at that time. Talent had to have some sort of technical prowess, a little bit more than they have to have today. I mean, it's not like me.
Combining the two,
right?
Went back to the University of Washington. Oh, thank you.
That's going to cost you $10. Yeah, you think it's free us finding your glasses, James? I mean, come on now.
But it was. I mean, I went back in when I went to the University of Washington. enlisted myself in communications.
Yeah.
And studied radio, TV production. Actually, radio, television journalism.
Right.
Was what I was getting into. So when I graduated from college, and I graduated 4.0.
Yeah. Okay.
And
well, yeah, going from a physics major to a theatrical or drama major, you better graduate 4.0.
And I did, and put out resumes
right
all over the 11 Western states.
Yes. Now, you didn't want to go east, huh?
No, I didn't want to go east.
Go east, young man. Go east. No.
Didn't get one reply.
Yeah,
Not one.
I can appreciate that very much.
So
It's like when I was dating, I put out lots of resumes and I got no replies.
Okay.
Right. That's all James said. Okay. Thank you. Continue.
Yeah. But my now ex-wife,
right,
her grandmother lost her husband.
Mm-hmm.
So she invited us to come live with her. Now, Grandma lived in Pasadena.
Oh, that's it. You just got bit. You got bit by
big.
Oh, boy, that's it. Forget it.
So we moved in with Grandma. It turns out Grandma had a fair amount of cash.
Uh-huh.
I mean, like gajillions.
Oh, boy. She was one of those kind of older women of the time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it didn't come from old money.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I mean,
Wow.
we used to go to the Hollywood Bowl.
Oh,
In
man.
a limousine,
Huh.
sit down in the picnic area.
Yeah.
You know,
Have some wine and cheese.
wine and cheese.
Yes.
And, you know,
Yes.
it was like another world.
Right.
Totally
Especially
another
for a
world.
kid from Wichita. Oh, no, I know.
Wenatchee.
Thank you. I'm going to blow that name at least a
Of
dozen
course.
times.
That's okay.
Okay.
I do too. But I named my company after it, so it's easy.
Okay.
While I was there, I started pounding the pavement looking
Yeah.
for work.
You know,
know.
why not? Right? Yeah.
And
But how did you get work in those days?
okay.
Because the
Well,
studio
this
system.
is, let me tell you,
Yeah.
it's virtually impossible.
You got to be almost nepotism. You almost have to had somebody.
I met a guy who said he could get me a job doing something. I forget what it
Right.
was. That never happened. And I was driving over on the west side, and I drove into the Fox lot. Actually, I parked and walked onto the lot. And as I'm walking on, the guard at the gate said, "Where you going?"
Uh-huh. The old, where are you going, young man?
Exactly.
Right.
And I said, "Well, I'm looking for a job." Where's the personnel office? He said, "Well, what do you do?" And I said, "Well, I'll do anything." He said, "Do you belong to a union or
Oh, yeah.
guild?" And I said,
Yeah.
"No." He said, "Well, you got a problem." So he said, "I'll tell you what, though. They're starting a new program called the Assistant Directors Training Program."
Oh, get out of here.
No. And he said, "You call the Producers Guild, or the Producers Association." They didn't have a guild at the time.
No, PGA wasn't there yet.
You call the Producers Association, and they'll set you up. I did. And they said, "We're having our next test, such and such a date to USC."
Right.
And they gave me the address, and I went down there. There were 1,500 people in that
Oh,
audience.
man, this is like a cattle call almost.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Down the street, around the corner, and down the street. Yes.
And the auditorium was filled, and they handed out a test.
And what was on the test, though?
It was kind of like almost like an SAT test.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
So I took the test,
Right.
turned it in, went home.
Forgot about it.
Forgot about it. Well, didn't really forget about
Yeah.
it. They went, "Come on, somebody call me, do something."
Right.
Finally got a call. Come in for a meeting. Come in for
Wow.
an interview.
Uh-huh.
And I had to have an interview with 6 guys who were members of the DGA.
So that was the next step.
Yeah.
They
I was
kind
gonna-
of assessed.
See, what they were
right.
doing is they were testing to find assistant directors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because what happened was in the industry, there was so much nepotism.
Oh, that's all it was.
Yeah. And the producers said, "Wait a minute. I can't get a decent production going here because there's nobody out there who knows what the hell they're doing.
Right. Yeah. My cousin Joey from Brooklyn.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
He needed a job, so I made him a first assistant. He doesn't even know how to get to the set.
That's right. Hey, come on. Forget about it. Right?
So anyway, one thing led to another, and I went in for the interview, and they said, fine, we'll be in contact. There was another 4 months. I got a call. The guy said, report to Paramount Studios.
Wow.
And I got into the program. Well, once I got in the program, I mean...
That was it. Right.
I walked onto my first soundstage at Paramount. I'd never been on a soundstage in my life.
Do you remember which one?
Yes.
Which one was it?
It was for
I know
a
the
little
lot
movie.
well.
I think it was stage 12. I think it was.
Oh, that's a nice stage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was a picture called Caper the Golden Bull with John. Oh God, I can't think of his last name. He was the director. Really tough director.
What year was this?
Oh God, this would have been in 1962, 60. No, I graduated in 66.
Right.
So it would have been about 68.
So how was your experience that first gig that you got?
I was absolutely blown away.
Yeah. How things functioned and worked and how everybody had,
I mean,
like ants, man. They're all
the funny thing of it is, even though this is the first time I was on a soundstage, I felt right at home.
Oh, well, because that's where your destiny truly was.
Yeah, and I said, wait a minute.
Yeah.
This feels good.
Yeah, isn't it funny how that works out when you do something right? I mean, especially on the creative process, because everybody in the industry, even if you're just pulling old camera cable, you're still part of the creative process. When you hit it, when it's right, and you know it, and you can't improve on it because it's right, and so that feeling is something that you really feel it in athletics and entertainment because it's so
well, you have
emotional.
Because let's face it, making movies is not the easiest thing to do in the world.
No.
But if you love it,
yeah,
then you're not a problem.
Hey, a job. What do they say? A job's not a job if you love what you're doing.
That's right.
That's why you're going to do it your whole life, whether you're 10 or whether you're 110. It doesn't make any difference. You're going to continue doing it because it's how you play.
Yep.
And it becomes play, and that's the cool thing about it. I mean, and to be on the set in the old system like that, where everybody really, when they said in those days, everybody knew everybody. Everybody knew everybody.
Oh yeah.
And when they said in those days, "You're not ever going to work in this town again," you're not ever going to work in this town again, because they held your contract, those lifelong contracts that they eventually got rid of for the talent side. So, you got a chance to experience all of that. It didn't last too long, though, in the beginning of your career. That was pretty much over with.
That was towards the end of that whole studio system. Right. I actually worked on Barefoot in the Park with Redford.
Did you really?
Yeah. I was a trainee on the show. And Redford and I used to sit and talk and so on. Cause
what kind of guy is he? Is he
was
a regular guy?
At that time, he was very laid back, very nice guy. And he said, because he was one of the last of the old contract players.
Yeah, no, he absolutely was. I mean, they got rid of Clint Eastwood out of Universal. They got rid of Burt Reynolds. They were letting people go on the contracts left and right.
But what he did is he went in and said, I want out. I want out now, because he was trying to land another picture.
Oh, okay.
And he wanted to make the deal himself, not the studio.
Yeah, because he'd make more money that way.
Oh yeah, because the studio took part of his money.
Yeah, and they paid you a salary, which was really great compared to the rest of everybody else's income in the world.
Right.
But not anywhere near what they make today.
No.
Some of these A-listers, triple star A-lister actors today, it's unbelievable what they make in that respect. But working with those, my first memories of Redford was with Paul Newman and Robert Redford in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. I was 9 years old, And the greatest scene in there for me was when they had Etta take off her clothes by gunpoint. I was like fascinated by that. And my mom, I'm 9 years old, right? I'm sitting in the theater, and I'm sinking down in my chair, trying not to be seen. I'm in between my mom and dad, and my mom says to my dad, "Is it okay?" My dad says, "Hey, that's my boy. It's all right. I'll explain it to him later." Well, I got that explanation from Mom later, but I was like, I already knew what those things were, and I was like, oh man, that was like the highlight of my ninth year in life, seeing Etta which she I think that who was the actress? Boy, she anyway, you know who she was,
yeah.
And that was just a great
see
movie.
her face, but I can't.
Yeah, who are those guys? Who are those guys? A famous line in that movie.
Yeah,
and so, did you get a chance to work with Redford again, though?
No, I didn't. Because of the way the contract was written, I was supposed to do 3 months at each individual studio.
Right.
So I spent the last thing I did at Paramount was an Elvis Presley movie.
Oh, you got to see the King.
I definitely got to see the King.
That's great. RKO used to own Paramount before Desi Lou got it, and then they owned the radio station out front there. 93 KHJ was right there at the old entrance, the old main entrance. Well, it still is the main entrance, but it's all built up now and different. But I hired on at KHJ in the mid-1980s, and it was the greatest job because then I could sneak through the back fence and get onto the Paramount lot and hang out my 8x10s, right, in the mid-'80s to everybody until I got caught. And then I had a little card that said I was at RKO, so they let me slide. I didn't have to jump over the Hollywood Cemetery back wall where they burn everybody's body, right? I used to jump over that wall in the late 70s to get on the lot, right? But the thing about Paramount, it's just a great, it's really the most vintage lot that we have left here in America.
It is. Warner Brothers is still pretty much the same.
Yeah.
Universal is totally changed.
Totally different. 20th century or 20th is totally different.
Yeah.
But Paramount still kind of sits there being the
problem now with the big studios is they're basically rental lots.
That's all they are. Yeah. So you got hooked up with Clint Eastwood. Now this is the great stories because you did a multitude of pictures with Clint.
Yes, I did.
And one of the pictures he did, guys, was a picture called "Every Which Way But Loose," and we'll probably get to that. But that was shot in my neighborhood at the Rock House, and I remember those days when that was being shot. And it's just ironic that you're here and you were shooting that in my neighborhood. Weird how the world works. But anyhow, Clint Eastwood. That is, from what I understand, he's really just really a nice man.
He really is. He's very laid back.
Yeah.
A really nice guy to work with because he lets you do your job. He may inject an opinion here or there, but basically you're the director, go do it. Or you're this. I started off with him as a first assistant. Mm-hmm. You want to hear the story?
Yeah, I do.
All right.
Anything Clint Eastwood. Everybody loves Clint.
We're getting ready. Universal was getting ready to do a picture with John Sturgis.
Mm-hmm.
It was Joe Kidd.
Oh, gosh. Joe Kidd and Outlaw Josie Wales are my two favorite Clint Eastwood Westerns, and Unforgiven, of course, the one he did much older in his life.
Yeah.
But Joe Kidd with Robert Duvall's in that, and they're hunting down... who
was the Mexican kid?
That's John. He was in Bruce Lee's Enter the Dragon. That's John
Saxon.
John Saxon, and he's still alive today. And you see him occasionally at martial arts conventions and things like that.
Yeah.
John Saxon, yeah, absolutely. That was great, man.
But what happened was John had a first assistant that he always used. But the guy got ill, and he was in the hospital. So the studio called, because I was down in the bullpen.
Mm-hmm.
In those days, which is what I said, as an assistant director, you worked for a studio, you had a job.
Right.
For as long as you could stay at the studio.
As long as you didn't mess it up.
As long as you didn't mess it up, didn't piss anybody off.
Yeah, you weren't doing a Wienerstein. Weinstein. I call him Wienerstein the monster. Right, yeah.
Anyway, so they called down the bullpen and said, Jim, go up. I want you to meet this guy, John Sturgis. And I went, John Sturgis? I went, holy mackerel.
Yeah, if you don't know who John Sturgis is, you just got to go Google search the name. I mean, we're talking names now of just some of the greatest people, man. What a great movie. Steve McQueen. Yeah. And on the bike at the last second, they put that in there, and the whole story behind that, and the lines with Steve McQueen. Mel Novak talks a little bit about his time with Steve McQueen on Tom Horn.
Right.
But anyhow, go ahead.
So anyway, I went up and met John Sturgis, and I looked over, and he's got a black cowboy hat sitting on the thing, and he's wearing black cowboy boots. It just so happened I was wearing black cowboy boots.
Oh.
And I had a black cowboy hat.
Are you sure, guys,
down
you
below.
didn't call each other at the hotel tonight? You sure about
we
that?
Didn't.
Because Lee and I, we call each other. We color coordinate.
Never met the man. And he said, what do you want to do, kid? And I said, well, I'm up here to be your first assistant, maybe if you accept me. He said, all right, tell you what you do. I want you to go up wardrobe. I want you to pick out all the wardrobe for the cast. And I went,
oh,
okay.
Oh, boy. That's a task.
So I did. I went up to wardrobe, and I sat there, and we went through. I told him at the time, I said, now, this is not going to be conventional, blue jeans and Western shirts and that sort of stuff. This is not what I'm not going for the Hollywood cowboy.
Yeah, it was about a rich rancher his wife was stolen, but she didn't really want to be with him.
No. And it was basically it was a time period. And what I wanted to do was wardrobe it to that time period.
It's interesting because, one of the things when I see that movie, each character is dressed so differently.
Yeah.
And you kind of get a sense that the century was changing. And one guy had more money, so he kind of was a little more modern. Another one was just still the old Western cowboy, and you had that dynamic. I mean, the I forget his name. He had the long coat, the long
right.
The long
coat. Greg.
Yeah, right. And he had that long coat on with that different kind of hat.
Yeah.
And so that was all you.
Yeah.
Wow.
None of it.
Very cool.
I don't think I had a cowboy hat in the entire group. They wore bowlers. They wore something similar to this.
Right.
A fedora.
Right. I love fedoras. Yeah.
And that was basically it. And then the Duvall character, I dressed him up. I had him in a suit. He hated it because it was a wool suit.
Yeah. Well, that's what they had those days.
That's what they had.
Yeah.
And it was a kind of a heavy jacket, but it was a sport, a suit jacket. And that's what he wore.
Did you guys shoot that in the wintertime, though, up there? Was that in Wyoming? Or
no, we shot it in Northern California, up around Bishop.
Oh, you were up there. Okay. Looked like Wyoming to me, of all places.
Well, then we moved to Tucson, Arizona.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And we shot at Old Tucson. We shot Old Tucson on that one. It was the new Old Tucson where we shot.
I can see why he hated the suit then, because it's hot.
It was hot.
Yeah.
But it was. It wasn't winter. It was fall. It was mid-fall, I think, when we shot.
So obviously they loved what you did as
he did. He liked it. And
as the.
It wasn't that so much. It was more. I was, to be honest with you, a very good first assistant.
Yeah.
Very organized.
Detailed and organized.
Detailed, organized, and quiet.
Yeah, first assistant is the most important assistant because you're working directly with the principal actors or the director, and you're working right there. The second, third, fourth assistant, depending what the budget is, they get different kind of jobs down the line in that respect. But you're right there in the thick of it. So
right next
I
to
mean,
the
to
camera.
get that kind of gig so early in your life, that was like
Well, yeah, I went through the program.
Yeah, but you had that training.
Yeah, and I had the training behind me, which was God helped me. I mean, I couldn't have done it without it.
So did you find when you're dealing with Clint Eastwood, especially when he was doing like the Dirty Harry stuff, the whole series, and all the spaghetti westerns, of course, but that led into Joe Kidd, Outlaw Josie Wales, and all these things, his westerns. Did you find him as an actor that he would make these big transitions that they make from real life, or was pretty much what we were seeing is just an extension of him when we see him on film?
Well, no.
To some degree.
Clint actually worked very hard at his characters.
He did. Okay, he does. Okay.
It wasn't a really conscious thing that he did.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody would ever know it. And it wasn't something that he kind of paraded in front of everybody, like some actors that I worked with.
Yeah.
It's just that he knew who this character was and what he had to do to make it work.
Is when he's doing that Dirty Harry scene, the first movie where he goes, this is the strongest handgun in the world, could blow your head clean off. Now you got to be asking yourself, punk, did he shoot 5 or 6 shots? Right? He does that. Well, that's the Clint Eastwood that you see him in Outlaw Josie Wales and Joe Kidd, but it isn't. But it's the Clint Eastwood intensity in the eyes and the forehead and the veins. But yet it isn't to him. And I guess that's the nuances that you're talking about.
Sergio Leone told Clint, he said, don't talk. Just look.
Gee, that's what I get told all the time. Don't talk. Just listen and look.
Clint has when we did Every Which Way But Loose.
Yeah.
It was a very wordy script because they were trying to tell a lot of jokes.
They were.
And so Clint and I sat there and he said, I told him, I said, look, Clint, there's a lot of dialogue in this thing. You sure we want to do it? He says, can you get rid of some of it? I said, yeah. So I went through it, pissed the writer off.
Yeah. Zip, zip, zip,
and
zip.
I went, zip. And I said, the thing is, you can look and you can do a double take better than anybody.
Oh, he's our best.
Yeah.
He and Burt Reynolds were just great on the double takes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's I said, do that. Yeah. And you'll sell the whole scene.
The stuff he did with the orangutan, I mean, was just great, Clyde, right? And
they had a love affair going.
I bet they did. I mean, how is it working with an orangutan?
Well, in this case, I mean, with Clyde, I mean, he was a natural born actor.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked with some monkeys, but I end up just monkeying around with them. So, dun. But orangutans are strong and they're really smart.
They're very smart, and they really want you to like them.
They kind of seems that way.
Yeah, they're, as the trainer pointed out, he told me, he said, they're really very introverted. Whereas a chimpanzee is an extrovert. He'll go out and slap you around and do things.
Right. So it's poop at you, too. Sorry.
An orangutan won't do that. An orangutan will just, if you scold him, he'll go off and pout.
That's amazing. Sort of sounds like some actors I know.
Tiga, we had 3 orangutans. We had Manus, who was Clyde.
Right.
Then we had Tiga, who did stunts. Mm-hmm. All the flipping and all that stuff.
Right.
That was Tiga.
Right.
And she got loose after we'd finished shooting.
Oh, boy.
One night, we were up in Taos, New Mexico, at a campsite. Mm-hmm. And there was this giant pine tree.
Oh, no.
And she got loose and went up the pine tree.
And hung out up there for a little while.
For quite a while. I mean,
tried to bribe her with bananas.
We were all wrapped.
Right.
And we all walked away.
But the trainer
had to stay there and try and coax her down.
Wow. When you were shooting around the valley, you shot at some great locations, historic locations like the Palomino Club.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and my godfather was he was the MC, Harry Newman, at the Palomino Club. And I started going to the Palomino Club with my parents to watch, that's where I met all the Johnny Cash, Waylon Jennings, Buck Owens as a kid, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. And one of the stories I have about the Palomino Club is when Tommy, who owned it, he had that big giant man of a body of a doorman. He was huge. He was big as the friggin' doorway. And he got in a fight, and with throwing some drunk out, and this drunk guy went across the street in his truck, pulled out a hunting bow and arrow, and shot him from across the street into the belly, shot him in the leg with an arrow. Right there at the front door of the Palomino. You know where I'm talking about. The front door right there, right? And that's it. Shot him with an arrow twice. But that was the Palomino. It was a wide open, shit kicker bar. That's what it was.
It was one of the original shit kickers.
Yeah.
I mean, they used to have fights there all the time.
All the time. And shooting in that place, when I saw that in the movie, I was just, oh, man, this is Memory City. This is really cool. That must have been fun shooting in there.
It was.
The music scenes and stuff.
And we had a great singer.
Right.
His name went right out of my...
You had, it was... he owns a Texas club.
Roy.
I'll get it in a second.
Okay.
It's right here. I got it right
me
here.
Me too.
Yeah.
But he stuttered.
Yes, he did. When he talked, he stuttered.
Yeah, he stuttered really badly.
Yeah, but when he sang, it was...
It just, boom. It was like...
Yeah, it was weird how that. That was. But of course, that became one of his traits. People knew that, and they loved the fact that he overcame that in his career, and he could sing so beautifully and wonderful. When you're
Mel Tillis.
Mel Tillis. That's right. Mel Tillis.
I really liked him. He was such a nice guy. It
seems like a lot of the films that you've done over the years are films that were a lot of fun to do. They were films that, from a directorial or first AD or whatever, they were fun sets to work on. Because some films can, when you look at them in the finished product, you kind of, people are upset or you don't get that fun, happy family kind of feeling. But a lot of stuff that you worked on, you kind of get that feeling at the end product.
I think one of the reasons is because all the Clint Eastwood films, for example, Clint likes to have a relaxed, easygoing set.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't like a lot of tension. He doesn't like a lot of people upset and that sort of thing.
Right.
And other producers that I worked with, kind of the same way. And I definitely like a nice, quiet, easygoing set.
Yeah.
And I've got a first assistant who works that way, and he's also 6'4", and
that's nice. That's nice. My grandfather, when at Warner Brothers, I talk about him quite a bit because he had a lot of history at Warner Brothers over 50 years, but he got hooked up with the John Wayne group of people. And my grandfather was a Teamsters. He was a truck driver. The reason why it was hard, he could run all that old equipment that the studios used to have. There was no rental yards. I mean, they had their own stuff. And this stuff was, some of it was circa 1925, these cranes and dozers and stuff. And my grandfather could run that in 38.
Right.
And, of course, they modernized as time went on. But the point is, and then he was a big old Scott-Irish country boy from Pana, Illinois, 6'3", 350 pounds of solid oak, not, walrus.
Right.
I mean, just a country boy, a big country boy. And, of course, redneck, that made a redneck look red. I mean, he had blue eyes, auburn hair, redneck, Scott-Irish, right? And so he loved to play pool and play cards. So the John Wayne stuff he worked on about 20 years with John Wayne. And one of the things he said was the reason why that he stopped going out on locations, he would only work on the lot, is that he just got tired of the craziness that would happen at the end of the day, the partying that John Wayne liked to do, and because he liked to drink, and
yes, he did.
He liked to carouse around and have a good time and smoke his cigars and cigarettes and play cards and rebel rouse. That was John Wayne. Everything that you saw on camera was personified in his real life.
Yeah.
And my grandfather was more of a quiet individual, and he got tired of that. So yeah, there's a lot of merit to what you say when you work with some people. It's like, I hope you're here tomorrow morning.
I worked with Anthony Quinn.
Oh God, the great Anthony Quinn. Wow.
It's the only movie that I ever worked on that was kind of problematic from the standpoint that it was pain in the ass.
Well, he definitely liked
Or
things from what I've read.
It wasn't Quinn. Quinn and I got along beautifully.
Right.
Our producer and I did not get along.
Yeah.
And I think it was primarily because it was called Caravans.
Mm-hmm.
It was based on a James Mitchell novel. James Mitchell novels are notoriously hard to make into movies.
Yeah, they're like this thick.
And
I mean,
and they're travelogues.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about a guy that over describes everything. That's what his novels are like. Picks up the glass that has hot rum in it. I mean, the glass, you get the color of the glass, was the sun coming through the glass? Was the rum sparkling at night? Was it nighttime? Yeah, I mean, that's how his novels are.
Yeah. And it was difficult to make it. And the producer was very nervous about the whole situation.
But I mean, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Working with Anthony Quinn, I was told from the very beginning that he was going to be a pain in the neck, that he liked to eat directors alive.
That's what I've read.
Yeah. So I said, well, okay, let's see what we can do about that. I knew that the first thing he was going to ask me is, why am I here? What is my character? What am I doing? So I sat down, I wrote a 10-page backstory on his character. When he asked me that, I said, here, read this. And he was blown away. From that point on, he and I got along great. Because there's one thing you have to be in this business. On the set, even off the set, you have to be professional.
Absolutely.
You have to know what you're doing. You have to do it.
There's no room for unprofessionalism because it costs money and time.
That's correct.
There is no room for it, especially in 2017, where you're as good as the last job that you've done.
Especially when you're shooting in a place like Iran.
I mean, you don't want to spend too much time over there anyway. Yeah, because you never know what's coming around the next corner.
That's true.
Some of the great things that you've done, I wanted to go over this. I'm just going to hit some of them because I thought they were just terrific. The Andromeda Strain, one of my all-time favorite movies, with the laboratory deep in the ground, that total intensity and that stress of the Andromeda Strain. How did you create that intensity?
That was Robert Wise.
Right.
But he did delegate. He was very fastidious. He hired an art production designer who was one of the best in the business, but also very expensive.
Yeah.
The walls of that lab were all lacquer. They were painted with lacquer.
Wow.
And, you can't do something like that.
No.
The other
Everybody
thing he
get
wanted
lacquer
to do,
drunk.
Robert Wise came to me one day and he said, Jim, I got a task for you. I was a trainee at the time.
Right.
I said, what's that? And he said, we need to figure out a way to get these animals to die on camera without actually killing them.
Right.
And you can't touch them. It has to be in this enclosed space.
Yeah.
And, we bring out their little cage, open the door.
I remember that scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I had to go out and figure out how to do that.
How did you get the little monkeys to die?
Yeah. How did I do that?
I don't know.
I went to UCLA and I talked to the head of the School of Vivology.
I'm sorry, the School of Astrology?
Vivology, which is the study of dead things.
You know something? That is the first time in my whole life that I've heard that word, and I have a huge library of books, and that's the first vivology.
Vivology. It's a study.
Man, you just stumped me. I don't get stumped on words, and that vivology, the study of dead things.
Yeah, basically what they do is his school, they take lab animals, and when they do experiments on them and all of that, then eventually they die.
Right.
And then he has to examine them and figure out what killed them.
Wow. So what clues did he give you that allowed you to make that happen? So what he did
was he said, well, let's see what happens here. So he got a lab rat, and we went in, and we put it in a little cage, a little box, and he hit it with CO2, carbon dioxide.
Right.
Pretty soon he just passed out. So he brought him out and gave him artificial respiration, and the animal came back to life.
Wow.
So I said, okay, let's do it.
Can we do that with little monkeys?
So what we did, I talked to the production designer, and he built this big enclosure with this wall of cages in the back.
Mm-hmm.
And what he did was we would put an apple box in the middle of the big enclosure, put a candle on it, light the candle, and start the CO2. I stayed inside that enclosure with the scuba tank on.
So when the air went out?
When the candle went out, I went over, took out the apple box and the candle. They rolled the camera, and they would reach in, they'd pull the cage out, drop it down onto the deck, which was all CO2.
Right.
Lift the thing, the guy came out, the animal came out. Right. The monkey was spectacular because he grabbed his throat like
I know,
this.
It was great. That was the most intense scene for, once again, a 10-year-old kid. I was like, wow, man.
And then he fell over.
Yeah.
And then I cut the camera right in, grabbed the animal, passed it through to the vet who was on the other side, and he gave him artificial respiration.
Well, I'm glad you did that, James, because if you said you gave mouth-to-mouth resuscitation to a little monkey, I was going to say, well, maybe we can make some money together. I don't know, I mean...
Which was really bad, though, because after we finished shooting the sequence, I went out and the vet handed me the monkey.
Right.
The monkey bit me.
You get pissed off.
He bit me, and he ran off into the rafters of the studio in the sound stage.
Well, that monkey wasn't monkeying around, was
he? No, he wasn't.
So other great movies. We're kind of running out of time, so I want to High Plains Drifter, another great movie. Just a fantastic twist at the end of that movie. You never saw it coming, where they paint the town red and the whole, and he's the victim that was lynched, and it's just a great movie. But one of my all-time, you had The Execution of Private Slovak. What a great TV film that was.
That was fun to do.
I loved watching that one. And that's an adaptation of a true story.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and then you had, Sunshine, Linda, Showdown. You had the Bravos, Duel, Vanished, but Outlaw Josie Wales. Can you relate to me the scene when Josie Wales comes out and meets the chief on the plane because he's a guerrilla fighter, and that has got to be one of the, in my opinion, that's one of the top 5 cinematic scenes between two great actors listening to each other, talking to each other to try to make a deal happen, and it is so truthful and honest. I love that scene where he talks about the buffalo will be yours, and we come here to live or we come here to die. What a fantastic scene.
It's a great scene.
How did you guys set that up?
You just stage the scene like you would any other scene, both on horseback, which makes it difficult.
Mm-hmm.
It took a while to shoot. Can't remember the actor's name.
He was a famous actor, did a lot of indigenous people.
Yeah, he did a lot of American.
Absolutely. And you talked earlier about Clint Eastwood learning in his younger career to not talk. Well, both of them, they have a line. It was just so natural and so real. You felt like it was really happening at that moment, at that time, and they would listen and decide what they were going to say. It's just a beautiful scene.
Okay, I'm going to destroy your...
You're going to kill me now, aren't you? Oh, no, I don't want to.
One of the reasons that it went the way it did is because our Indian chief couldn't remember his lines.
Oh no, he was like Clark Gable. Was he reading off cue cards?
Well, we got to the point where we almost did that, but eventually they said, no, we'll just go and let him remember. And that was part of it. What it came out being was he was translating in his own head. That's what it sounded like.
That's what has happened in there. I'm looking for his name.
The other guy that was, I thought, incredible was Chief Dan George.
Chief Dan George was fantastic.
He was incredible.
Wasn't he great? I mean, he was following along with the dog and Chief Dan George in the beginning. And
yeah,
he just was his side. He was like Chief Dan George is like my Dan the man, right? He just followed along, and he was just great. You know,
the scene I liked was when the Comancheros have got Chief Dan George. And what's the name? The old woman.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah.
Let me see. You had Clint Eastwood, Chief Dan George, Sandra Locke, Bill McKinney, John Vernon. Those are the main ones.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can get more of the cast in here of that. But anyhow, tell me about the scene.
Well, the scene that I liked
is that the one that he's buried in the ground?
No, this is the one where the Comancheros are there. And Clint rides up on this rise in front of them, is facing them, and the Comancheros come to a stop. And it's kind of sunsetty.
Right.
The sun's very low. And you go to a close-up on Chief Dan George, and he says, as Clint rides up, he looks, and he says, he's here. And he looks down, if he can see the dog, and then he turns to the lady and he says, he's going to do it. She said, what can one do? And he says, no, watch. And you see Clint start to pull his guns, and then Chief Dan George says, now spit. And he goes,
oh, yeah, I remember that scene. Yeah, that's great, because he always spit on the dog.
Spit on the dog.
Spit on the dog's head. Let me see. Clint Eastwood, Chief Dan George, Sandra Locke, Bill McKinney, John Vernon, Paula Truman, Sam Bottoms, Geraldine Kearns, Woodrow Barley, Joyce Jensen, Sheb Woolley, Royal Dano, Matt Clark, Will Sampson. That's who 10 Bears was. Will Sampson. And the list goes on and on and on. Man, do we have a few more minutes, buddy? Lee? About 2 minutes? Okay. I just love that movie. Out of all the stuff that you're doing, do you like the stuff that you're doing now with digital cameras versus the old film? Have you made that transition? I know.
Yeah,
completely.
I did. I've shot with a digital camera. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
I have a particular camera I like to use.
Right.
Which is the Arri Alexa, because
great camera.
It's more like a film camera. And the resolution gives you kind of a film look, which I like.
Right. It's 4K too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And
do you find that the way the industry's turned into, with all the release points, that you can get stuff distributed out now via the internet and globally? You don't even have to have anything in America. You can sell it to China and make a ton of money.
Yeah.
I mean, do all your pre-sales and everything. It's changed. It
has changed, but it in a lot of ways, if you accept the change and you go with it, it works very well. I mean, you just have to, don't buck it.
Right.
Don't go against it. Just do it.
The stuff that you're working on now, what's your newest project that's happening?
Okay, right now I'm in the process of putting together a large fund that's going to allow me to do several films.
Fantastic. How can we help you? Do you have like a GoFund site or Kickstarter?
No,
or Indigo,
it's a private investor.
Okay.
And there's nothing we do now except wait for his deal to complete.
Right.
Which should happen in the next 10 days.
Yeah, that's fantastic, man.
Once that happens, I've got a project called Roadrunner.
I like that.
Yeah, and it's about a guy who owns a 1967 Plymouth Roadrunner.
It's like Vanishing Point almost.
Yeah.
Kind of reminds me of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They use a Plymouth in that.
Yeah, they used a Plymouth in that. It was a
Yeah.
Barracuda.
Yeah, that was a
A
Barracuda.
Barracuda.
We're using the Roadrunner.
Great car.
Yeah, it is. They raced it.
Yeah, at Daytona.
Yeah.
Yeah, that and
What's his name?
Can we go a little bit overtime? Do we have enough time to go a little overtime? Okay. All right. Well, once we go off, I want to continue on for about 5 or 10 more minutes, and then we can go back in the archive and do an edit on some of this stuff. And I just want to continue on because
Sure.
I got so enthralled with your career that I didn't realize we're at the end of the show already. And I want to talk about the stuff that you're doing now, and I can put that back into it.
And I'll throw a couple of other little stories.
Yeah,
in there.
absolutely. All right. Hey, everybody, I what can I tell you? This is a pleasant, absolute surprise for me to be interviewing this great man. I mean, he's been around Hollywood for so long. James Fargo, everybody. You've seen so many. The films are the story of your life if you're near my age in my 50s. I mean, TV, film. So it's just been a pleasure having you. How can people stay in touch with you? Do you have a Facebook fan page or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook.
And it's just James Fargo?
It's I think it's under James Fargo or Louis J. Fargo.
Okay. So, keep in touch with what's going on there. And we're going to continue with the interview here and get some stuff in on the Jesse T Show. Good to have you along. We'll see you on Monday. Road tripping tomorrow. See ya! So we're just going to continue on.
Okay.
So the new stuff that you're doing, like this Roadrunner, is it all going to be on location? Or is it going to be in the
Yeah, it'll
studio?
be on location.
Yeah.
We're not exactly sure right now. I think probably North Carolina.
Well, there's so many great states to shoot in now that you can get great tax benefits and things
but
like
the thing
that.
is, here's my philosophy. Tax benefits, all that, it's great. It's fine. But I want to find a location that works for the film, not for a tax benefit.
Right.
If the location works for the film, fine. If it's got a tax benefit, that's just a plus.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you go out looking for just nothing but a tax benefit, then you're not going to get the right location.
Yeah, you're not going to have the creative input the way you want to have it. You want to look a certain way. When they did films in the old days and it was all on the lot and they could go out their back door, across the river and shoot all the Westerns in Forest Lawn because they could do those kinds of things. But you can't do that anymore.
There's a great quote. I think his name, Harry Cohen, who is head of Columbia Studios.
Yep.
Two producers are getting ready to shoot a movie. And they went into Harry's office and said, look, we want to go on location because we want the this, that, and the other thing. Harry turned to him and said, what are you talking about? A 3's a 3, a rock's a rock, shoot it in the back lot.
And that's exactly how it was.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, there weren't 15 million people living in Los Angeles then. You had wide open spaces where you didn't have to worry about jets and airplanes and loud trucks and trains, so you could have the quietness. You had the Western feel, the country feel. You could create a jungle feel. You could do a lot of things like the old MGM lot.
Yeah.
The whole back lot there, they shot so much stuff there. I mean, Gone with the Wind and all kinds of things they shot on back lots because they had the ability to do that. Hogan's Heroes, the TV series, was shot on a back lot. McHale's Navy was shot on a back lot. All the original Disney stuff was shot just right over here in Burbank on their back lot. I used to skinny up over the fence there and jump in the river, jump in the lake. I got thrown out many times as a juvenile. But today,
Universal's back lot was huge.
it was the whole back parking lot where the offices are now. I mean, remember they had the Kirk Douglas and the Sparta. Kirk Douglas. They had the Army coming down that back hill there.
We shot Airport there.
You shot Airport there. I mean, so, but today it seems like you got to go get the realism, and you got to go on location. So you find yourself going on more locations now than ever before.
Oh yeah, I think so. I think it's because it's become kind of a thing. You know, you get a movie and it's shot outdoors, and you go for the realism.
Right.
Like if you're going to shoot a scene in New York City, you want to be in New York City.
Right. Yeah.
And I can understand that because...
Well, The Sting was shot on 20th Century's New York back lot.
Yeah.
You know? So... But you can't emulate New York City.
When I did Caravans...
Right.
It was supposed to be in the Middle East. I like to shoot big shots.
So you like that Panavision?
I like that Panavision, that panorama.
Oh, yeah.
That sort of thing. I like that. You can't really do that on a back lot.
No, because you're, especially like I said today, it's so crowded in. They're so, and you get too much possibilities of stuff happening out there you can't control. Yeah, you know
that happens all the time.
Filling your camera up. I mean, when I did the Shootist, my first film in '76, you know, I just on the labor gang, and then I got elevated to do, you know, one line as a stable boy. You know, what do you want me to do with your horse, sir? You know, that's what I said to John Wayne. You know, feed it and shoe it, and that's what his response was, and off he went. But they had to reshoot a lot of scenes in that because they didn't realize that there were some telephone lines that they weren't able to, no one saw them between the old buildings.
Right.
No one saw the telephone lines. So they had like a whole day of shooting. I remember this vividly. They had to redo the whole day of shooting and just adjust the camera in a different angle so that it wouldn't be seeing those telephone lines. So who gets in trouble for that?
I assume
somebody does.
The camera.
Yeah, somebody does. So, but that's it. You know, there's so much noise out there that going on set.
Yeah, both visual and audio.
Yeah, that you got to get out. Do you find that the talent today it comes to the project differently than they did 15, 20, 25 years ago?
Yeah, they do. I mean, stars do because they get paid so much money. That they expect to be treated differently.
That's expectation.
Yeah, right? they have this expectation. And not all of them, but some of them do. They just feel that they're special.
I remember the old story. I took singing lessons from this guy. Actually, his name was Christopher Robin. He lived in Clark Gable's Hollywood house.
Oh, really?
And, you know, Clark Gable was always a party man. He was a party animal. And he always liked to hit the sauce. And when they were doing, he was telling me a story that came with the house, I guess. And I kind of corroborated that story later, that Clark Gable, when he was on the set shooting Gone with the Wind in the famous scene, you know, frankly, I don't give a damn, right? You know, that famous scene. There, he forgot all his lines because he was pretty sauce that day. And so they put up cue cards, but the print on the cue cards was too small for him to see. So they made the cue card print like 10 inches. So they had like 10 guys on the backside of the camera holding cue cards so he could read his lines. So when you look at that scene, you'll see that his eyes you really got to look at it. I mean, you got to know it to see that he's reading the cue cards because he can see them and he can remember the lines.
Right.
But he was a guy that had a very specific routine, like we talk about the big stars today. He had a very specific routine, and they violated it. He would get really upset about it and walk off the set, from what I understand.
What's his name? A-Team.
George Papard?
George.
I've always liked him.
Yeah, he was.
And Banachek. Remember Banachek?
Oh, yeah.
I love that series.
That was a good series.
That was a great series, Banachek.
I worked on A-Team. I did a couple of them. But I worked on a feature that he was on as a first assistant.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a thing in his contract that said, I do not work past 6 p.m.
And 6 p.m. came, and he was gone.
He was gone.
Yeah.
So the director, can't remember his name, comes with old age.
Look I'm 57 and I'm starting to forget things. So God bless you, man. You're doing just fine. I forget my watch, so I have to put another watch on. I forget my stuff here. It's crazy.
But anyway, we had a scene to shoot that was, well, it was basically a lead up to a big scene we were going to do the next morning, which was the ride out of the cavalry and the wagon train and the whole 9 yards. So the director wanted to get this one shot. And he said, Jim, go ask George if he could stay a little longer, say till 6:30 or so. So I went in, and George was very nice about it, but he said, no, I'm out of here, 6 o'clock. And 6 o'clock, bam, he was gone.
In the car and gone.
That was a heck of a show that we shot. It was funny.
Yeah, the A-Team was it was a great program. Mr. T, and of course the whole mythology behind the Chicago bouncer, Mr. T, the world's greatest bouncer, and all of that. He has quite a story. He almost died. He had cancer and got really ill in his life, and then he got well, and so actually the Mr. T, he's got quite a story.
So did Face, the guy that played Face.
Yeah, he had quite a story too. He got really ill.
He had stomach cancer.
Yeah, they almost died, and then he got well, and and that. So, one of the things when my grandfather was doing the work with Warner Brothers and John Wayne, they would go out on the sets out and do the westerns, and they shot a lot right near the nuclear firing range in New Mexico, and all that dirt. They weren't on the base, but all those nuclear bombs, they exploded in the 50s up in the air. That dust and dirt landed somewhere, and everybody that went out to those sets died of cancer, of some form of cancer.
Wow.
Everybody. It's not just one or two. Everybody. Now, my grandfather he had stopped going out on locations at that time because he just, like I said, but he didn't go out on those locations, and he didn't die of cancer. He died just of old age.
John Wayne did.
Yeah, John Wayne had throat cancer.
Yeah.
But everybody died of some sort of...
He also smoked a lot, and he...
Yeah, absolutely.
Cigars and all that.
So you've got these new projects coming on. You're still working. You're having a great time in this business. It's not a job. This is just your life, and you're playing and growing and creating. And, what a fantastic life.
I've got Roadrunner, which, God willing, will happen, which I'm pretty sure it will. Right after that, I've got another. Well, actually, I'm going to produce a film at the same time that we're shooting Roadrunner.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little action film called Ticker. It's a great script. It's about a guy who has a bomb implanted in his body, and he doesn't know it. He wakes up in the middle of the desert, and these people rescue him and then bring him back, and he's got this scar.
Right.
What the heck? So he goes into the doctor.
It's like E.T. aliens or something, right?
They can't find anything missing. Finally, this woman doctor sees something, and she looks at it, and there's a little light in there, and it's counting down.
Oh man, that's going to be a great scene apart for the guy who plays it.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you're going to have the ability. He's going to have ability to go through a lot of emotional dialogue in himself.
Oh yeah, that's going to be a good scene. And then the rest. Then he gets hooked up with his cop,
mm-hmm.
who takes care of bombs.
So he's a bomb expert.
And they have to go around, and because of the type of bomb it is, you can't go in and pick it up.
Right.
If you do, it'll set it off.
Right.
So they have to find the guy who put it there.
Huh.
And
it's almost like a high-speed Jason Bourne kind of.
Except that it's partly comedy.
Oh Lord.
It's funny as well.
That's
the
funny.
dialogue is hysterical.
Isn't it true the greatest comedy comes out of the worst tragedies?
Yep.
And the worst intensity comes your greatest laughs. So, I mean, it's. I wonder who. Do you have in mind who can play that for you? If you had your pick of the litter.
The Mummy.
Who?
The Mummy. What?
Oh yeah, I know who you're talking.
What's his name?
I know who you're talking about. I don't know his name off the top, but I know I know who exactly you're talking about. Yeah,
he's done a lot of comedy.
He does. He has done. He's got a really interesting look.
Yeah,
really kind of.
He plays the cop.
Funny.
And we've got a guy.
You like doing comedies or dramas?
I love comedy. I love all of it.
Yeah.
I like action. I like comedies. I like comedy because it's fun to do.
Yeah, everything more or less approached the same way.
But it's
action.
hard.
Comedy is harder to shoot. Is it harder to?
Yeah, because
I mean, how do you know what's funny until an audience laughs at it? I mean,
well, you kind of got to have an instinct for it,
right? Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I mean, because I've done some stand-up comedy, and when you do the early show. I was never a headliner. I just did it for the fun timing practice and made some money.
Timing is everything.
Yeah, right. I would do, the early show when no one was drunk. And, of course, as the night goes on, they get drunker and they laugh easier. But I would do the early show. I'd do my routine. Then I'd come back and open up for the night show. And the same jokes wouldn't work. And sometimes they would. You never knew what was going to work or what wasn't going to work. The same story would work or wouldn't work. And that's where you had to make the adjustments on the fly and do the improv to get around it and have enough material in your head so you can deal with the situation at hand. So comedy is complex. It's really difficult
when
to
you're
do.
Shooting comedy, what's really important is the timing in editing. And in shooting, because you don't want to miss the gag, but you don't want to overplay it.
Boy, that's a finesse game right there. That really is a real finesse game.
One of the funny parts, when Clint did Every Which Way But Loose,
which is really a comedy, like you said.
It is a comedy.
Yeah.
We were both surprised how easily he could get laughs.
He's so darn serious in everything else that he does that,
Well, it's that seriousness that got him the most laughs because something would happen and he'd look at it, he'd give that kind of a
that
funny look.
Right.
And people would laugh.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting that when you're premiering your movie to a regular audience that has paid the $17 to come see it, and you go watch it, not the industry people, just the regular audience, and you see it, and they laugh at things that you didn't think were funny when you were shooting, and then they don't laugh at some things that you thought everybody thought was hilarious, and then they laugh at some of the things that worked that you knew would work, but that's an interesting feeling, isn't it?
It's a scary feeling. When we did The Enforcer.
Oh, that's part of that series. That's terrific.
That was Dirty Harry #3.
Right.
And we shot it in San Francisco. We had a premiere in San Jose. And what we did, we kept the audience there after midnight, after the last show, and ran the movie.
Right.
And I was we had a section roped off for
people on the cast and stuff.
Right. Well, basically Clint, myself, Bob Daly, his producer, the associate producer, and myself. Mm-hmm. I sat on the end.
Oh, boy.
And I was sitting right next to Clint. And the movie started, and it started going, and the audience is watching. And I'm so scared. I finally got up, and I had to walk out. And I stood in the corridor.
That's funny.
And listened.
Oh, you had that. You had the big ear in the corridor. Oh,
that's right.
You know how many directors have said that to me, where they've gone down the corridor and they stood with the big ear because they just had to get up and go. They couldn't.
I couldn't sit. I stood out there
occurrence with you
for the
guys.
entire movie, and just like you said, I listened for the laughs.
Right.
And I heard them, and I also heard the ooh, ow, wow, and that's
So you heard all the reaction.
all the reactions, and they were good.
When he did Unforgiven, and you're right about his double takes. When he did Unforgiven with Morgan Freeman, and they were dealing with the young guy who couldn't see, who wanted to be a gunslinger, and that whole routine in there with Ned and him, very comedic. And Clint Eastwood's double takes, and Morgan Freeman's double takes back on the few lines that they had, very, very, very comedic. So, he does have that flair. But I often wanted to ask somebody like you, who's had the experience, the difference between shooting comedy, action, and drama. And more than one person has said that comedy is one of the more difficult things to shoot.
It was a Henny Youngman.
King of one-liners.
On his deathbed, I think it was Henny Youngman. Somebody said, "How you doing, Henny? How's it going?" And he said, dying's easy. Comedy's hard."
Him and Rodney Dangerfield are some of my two favorite old-timers.
Yeah.
I just love those guys. Seeing Henny Youngman when he's down here in Hollywood at the Palace, which is called some other nightclub now, but when it was originally live TV, network TV, and his one-liners and his rapport with Frank Sinatra going back and forth from the balcony, and Frank Sinatra show that was shot there, just absolutely love it. So, all right, cool. Well, I appreciate you standing overtime here for me. I wanted to talk a little bit about what you're doing today. And I'm glad we got
basically,
some of that
as
out.
I said, we're waiting for funding to come in. As soon as it comes in,
Right.
I've got about 12 pictures
ready to go. Man. And, the world is so wide open for distribution. AFMs are coming up. I mean, they just buying stuff left and right now, especially in India and China and Dubai or the Middle East. It's pretty amazing how distribution has changed. Netflix,
Yeah, there's so much out there to sell to, like you say, all the foreign distribution.
And if you can control it, you know.
Netflix, Amazon, Hulu.
Yeah. They'll make a deal with you. We're negotiating some stuff right now. I am, and they'll make some deals because they got to get the product.
Yeah, they need
want quality product. And there's not enough of it. Just simply not enough of it. And the budgets.
And the other thing is, there's not enough original product.
Yeah, everything. Well, isn't it? Shakespeare once said that there's really only 7 plot lines or something like that.
True.
It's just a variation or a mixture of them all. And in one sense it is, but this new generation of filmmakers, they are different than the older generation of filmmakers. Mm-hmm. And they look through the lens differently. It's kind of the way I explain it. It's interesting what they see versus what somebody else sees that comes from film. The digital directors, I call them. That's what they grew up in, and that's what they do. They haven't touched film ever. I think film was the greatest training ground for this digital revolution for a director.
I hope so.
Well, obviously you must be right. You're still here with us, live and kicking. All right, my friend. I appreciate you coming by.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
This was a lot of fun for me. I hope it was fun for you.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, I just love your old stories, and I just so much insight that we learned about today, and it's just my pleasure. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
James Fargo, everybody, here on the Jesse T Show. That's right. Hey, every Monday through Friday from 5 to 6, we're here live, and we've got some great people coming in here in the next couple of weeks. But we're going to put this one together with what we did live and cut some of this stuff in here for you. And our Facebook audience, YouTube audience, and live stream audience who's still with us. So I appreciate you guys hanging out there and sticking around for us. All right. Hey, good. Have a good one. The Brown Beauty's off duty. I'll see you later. Jesse Torrero, I'm out of here. Bye-bye.